Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching YourTown television. My guest, Edwin Huizinga. Welcome.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having me.
So this is great. So obviously violinist. Let's start with the the big picture.
I grew up on a farm in the middle of rural Ontario, Canada. And when I was 5 years old, my mom gave me a violin and said, you know, why don't you try this beautiful instrument out? And my parents love music, and sort of ever since that moment, I've been in some way involved with performance, music, composition, performing, organizing, education, and just, for me, music is like a really important element of soul connection.
So let's talk about two projects just to get us organized. I want to talk. You've recently done an opera.
Yes.
Called Angel.
Yes.
And what's the genesis of that, and what led you to that?
Right. So many years ago, I started performing with an amazing Baroque orchestra in Toronto, where I've spent much of my life living, called Tafel Music Baroque Orchestra. And they work very closely with this amazing opera company called Opera Atelier that does mostly Baroque opera. So I ended up doing many operas with them in the pit.
Would you explain what a Baroque opera is, just
Yes.
so everybody knows?
Of course, of course. So these are operas that are much generally happening in the 17th and 18th centuries. You know, there's a lot of composers like, you know, Charpentier and Monteverdi, and you know, it's generally like any sort of early music composer that does opera from way back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they also do classical operas, like Mozart's Magic Flute is something they would also do, for sure. So I played in the pit orchestra for many years, and we traveled all over the world. We have a residency at the Palace of Versailles in France, and that was, of course, a dream situation, performing in that opera house that was made and designed for Marie Antoinette. And then a few years ago, the director, Marshall Pankowski, he said, can you start writing some music for us? So it started with a pas de deux, which I did for solo violin and solo male dancer. And we did this beautiful thing, and it was really fun. Many people loved it. And then it grew to a small piece that I wrote with an incredible poem written by Rainer Maria Rilke. And we got it translated, and I did that. And this past year came Angel, the opera. And so they said, look, we really want you to expand on this and write, you know, about 60 minutes of this sort of journey of, again, more Rilke poetry, but also some words from John Milton. And we had 6 incredible soloists from all over the world performing, including my dear friend Misha Brugger-Gosman, who's a beautiful soprano. And then that just premiered on film recently, because we haven't done it live yet.
Oh, wow.
So, but the film was a tremendous experience, and I think so important in the world of art right now, that we're not, just because we're not necessarily on a proscenium stage, that we're still making all of this incredible art for people to be part of and aware of. And
In fact, the COVID year was very much a year of experimentation and exploring new platforms and exploring new ways to make.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people, yourself included, really turned it into a positive.
Yeah.
You found things that you may not have found.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if everyone realizes, but the world of composition needs isolation.
Yes.
Like, you can't be writing music while you're traveling all over the world. You need, like, I live in a very small cabin in the Santa Cruz Mountains right now, surrounded by redwoods. It's very quiet. The loudest things are the birds in the morning, and so that's a great place for me to write.
The second thing I want to talk about is Fire and Grace. And so this is a new a CD that you've just released.
Yes.
And let's talk about this collaboration.
Okay. Well, many years ago, I met William Coulter, my dear friend and guitarist, and we met in Cleveland on a gig, actually, kind of randomly, and then we yeah, we just got together and started playing a little bit together, and then we started experimenting with Baroque music that I grew up with and love, and then folk music, which he grew up with and love. And then we said, how can we combine these things? So our latest album is talking about the Baroque music of Bach and then the folk music of Spain. And we interweave these in a way that I've never sort of seen or heard of being done. And at the same time, we take some of our like beloved pieces that we have arranged for ourselves for violin and guitar. The other beautiful thing about that is that it's very portable. So we can show up somewhere and play. And then if there's theaters that we perform in, we have that sort of ability to create arrangements for a chamber orchestra to surround us. We often have a singer to join us for a piece. And then this latest album also really sort of called upon working with dance, for example. So we did that as well.
So I saw you perform in the Church in the Forest.
Yes.
Which was amazing, and then you made a film out of that. So you've made a film project out of it.
Yep.
And you made the CD, which is a lot of work in that.
Yep.
Where did you record?
We recorded that one this past year in the Santa Cruz Mountains. A little studio called Bear Creek Studios. We had about 5 or 6 days that we could just use the studio at our disposal, and we had a great engineer and producer, our friend Andy Zenzak, who has a small audio video company called Gadget Box Studios. And so he was fantastic. He helped a lot. He ended up editing our album also with us, and then we ended up getting it mastered locally as well by a great gentleman in Half Moon Bay named Rainer Gombalczyk.
So one of the things that you talked about at this concert was going to Europe and exploring roots of folk music.
Yes.
Tell me about that a bit.
So this latest album is actually our third album. Okay. So our very first album together was really combining and researching and discovering Irish folk music and Baroque music and those combinations, which I think are much more similar than you would initially imagine, because they were happening at the same time. You know, Baroque music in the courts, you know, folk music in the bars and clubs and whatever. Probably homes, of course, kitchens. You name it. So that comparison and dichotomy is really amazing to me to think about and interweave together. So we did that, and we went to Ireland. We also made a film there, and we just found ways to incorporate the dance music that we really believe in, of this courtly music made by, you know, composed by people like Bach and Vivaldi and all these Baroque masters, as they say. And then this folk music that was just much more localized and a little bit more easy to listen to and maybe friendly for like a party situation. So that was really fun for me. And then we did a second album on Americana folk music. So we went through all kinds of music from this, you know, the United States mostly and Canada. And we did some Appalachian music, some Quebecois music, some music from the east coast of Canada, which is, of course, very much woven into the folklore of fiddle music. And then this latest project was us, of course, really diving deep into the traditional and folk music of Spain, which is just amazing. There's so many regions, just in Galicia, there's like this whole world of dance music, folk music, that is just really fun.
And isn't it interesting, because it becomes Celtic and it gets you back to Ireland in Galicia.
Yep, absolutely.
It's you know,
yeah.
The music follows the history.
Yes, and one of the most amazing instruments that I fell in love with is the Galician bagpipe, called the gaita. And of course that is a stunning instrument, and of course has many similarities to the Uilleann bagpipes or other Scottish bagpipes, but they're different. But like you said, there's so much crossover.
There's a linkage.
Yeah.
So let's closer to home. You've been just a great figure of making stuff happen on the Monterey Peninsula. and recently it's the Carmel Bach Festival. You're involved in the running of the festival, and you're also was the performer in the festival.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. And the Bach Festival is a long tradition here, and
Right.
and you've stepped in. And
Yeah.
how does that feel? And
Oh, it's amazing. So 15 years ago, I was invited by an amazing violinist that was, at the time, she was the concertmaster, Elizabeth Wallfish. And she brought me into this festival at the age of like 22, where I was just like, what is happening and where am I in this world? Playing for 5 weeks in Carmel by the sea with all these gingerbread houses that were real. And so that was amazing. And then a couple of years ago now, I got invited to be part of the artistic leadership team, which gave me a reason to be involved in programming in the future. And then I was also asked to direct one of the main concerts, which gave me this amazing artistic license to just feed them like hundreds of ideas, and then eventually we would pick one, and then I would just follow that. And it's become quite a fun festival moment. And then, you know, right now I'm also working on an academy. So I'm starting a Baroque and Classical Academy at the Carmel Bach Festival, which brings in 4 young artists every year to do community work during the festival, and then, you know, help them on their careers, which is something that, you know, I always like to think, well, what would I have wanted, and how do I make that happen for other people?
so then there's your collaboration with Michelle Jokic.
Yes,
So
yes.
let's talk about Michelle,
Okay.
who's a fabulous, fabulous cellist.
Yes, and one of these.
Yes.
She's just a lover. She's a great person. I mean, it's funny, at this point in my old age, as you know, whatever, I'm like, first rule, work with amazing people. Then second rule, obviously, I hope that they're like stunning musicians, but Michelle's both. And so, yeah, in the last couple of years, we started our own little collective called Manzanita Collective, which was, we played so many concerts together on her little porch in Carmel for the community, and played basically everything that was ever written for violin and cello. And now we continue to play together, and we're actually working on a concert right now. We're inviting a guest to join us, a violist, and we're going to do the Goldberg variations.
Oh, wow.
Arranged for string trio.
Wow.
So yeah, she's amazing.
And then you've been working with kids.
Yes, yeah. Fiddle Camp.
Fiddle Camp.
Yeah,
Let's talk
yeah.
about Fiddle Camp.
So 6 or 7 years ago, I started going to Big Sur, not only to hike and sort of explore the wow factor situation there, but I just started working with this amazing woman, Leisha Chapelet, and she runs this amazing camp called Big Sur Fiddle Camp, and it was just a way for me to just show the younger generation how much fun music could be. So it's just a totally different situation than what I grew up with in the classical music world, of just being super focused and practicing a million hours a day, which is important. But this is much more about learning tunes and spending time with the goats and the horses and the pigs and the cows and the sheep and going for walks. And so that's been
Which maybe makes better music.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, working with kids in the area has just become, you know, one of my passions, along with performing.
And what's next for you?
Oh, wow. Well, I run a festival in Canada that I always work towards growing. I'm really excited to continue to bring all kinds of new repertoire and sort of also different kind of cultures and traditions to the Bach Festival in the future. And I'm continuing to write a lot of music. And yeah, a lot more of what I really love and I'm doing right now, basically.
Well, a pleasure. I'm with Edwin Huizinga. I'm Mark Baer. You're watching YourTown Television. And now we're going to have a little more music.
Thought I would bring in my dear friend Fiona Gillespie, all the way from Philadelphia. We're in town playing some gigs,
Yeah.
and yeah, here's a little tune.
She was a rare thing, fine as a beeswing, so fine a breath of wind might blow her away. She was a lost child, she was running wild. She said, as long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. And you wouldn't want me any other way.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.